Sophie, I want to tell you about a small moment that I think every learner in the world has lived through.
Okay, go.
You wake up in the morning, you make coffee, you put on your headphones, you listen to a podcast in English, a real one, made for native speakers, maybe a comedy podcast, maybe a news show, maybe a long-form interview, and you understand it. Not every word, but most of it. You follow the jokes, you get the references, you catch the meaning. You feel proud. You think, my English is really good.
Mm-hmm.
You finish the podcast, you walk out of your apartment, you go to a coffee shop, you stand in line, you get to the counter, and the barista looks at you and says, "What can I get you?"
Oh,
And in that moment, your English vanishes. You stand there completely frozen. You forget the word for coffee. You forget what you wanted. You say something like, the black, no, the coffee, the small one with milk, sorry.
yes.
And you walk away with your drink and you think, what just happened? 20 minutes ago, I understood a real native podcast. Now I can't even order a coffee. What is wrong with me?
And the painful part is this isn't a small, isolated experience. This happens to almost every learner, constantly. The gap between what they can understand and what they can produce is enormous, and no one explains it.
And the worst part is, learners use this gap as evidence against themselves. They think, if I can understand the podcast, I should be able to speak. So if I can't speak, my brain must be broken. And they carry that shame for years.
When the truth is, understanding and speaking are not the same skill. They're not even close. They are two completely different brain operations, running on different systems, requiring different kinds of training. And the fact that you can do one beautifully doesn't mean you should automatically be able to do the other.
And today, we are going to break this illusion completely. We are going to show you the real, mechanical, scientifically backed difference between understanding English and producing English. We are going to explain why hours of podcast listening will never, by itself, make you a fluent speaker. And we are going to give you the practices that actually build production, because production is the missing piece for most B2 and C1 learners.
Welcome to Side by Side English Podcasts. I'm Sophie.
I'm Mark. Today is for the learner who consumes massive amounts of English content, podcasts, shows, videos, articles, books, and still freezes when they have to actually say something in real life. We are going to show you why this happens and what to do about it.
Stay with us. We have the two brains framework explained, why recognition is not production, the 4 hidden differences between understanding and speaking, the 3 practices that finally activate your speaking brain, a role play showing the same person at the podcast and at the coffee counter, and a word tour with 6 powerful B2 to C1 words.
Quick comment question before we begin. Be honest, how many hours of English content do you consume per week? Podcasts, shows, videos, drop the number. We want to see the gap between input and actual speaking practice.
Okay, let's break this illusion. So Mark, let's start with the central distinction. What is actually different between understanding and speaking? Because most learners treat them as 2 sides of the same coin. They are not.
They are not even the same coin. They are 2 completely different currencies. Let me name the framework: recognition versus production.
Walk us through it.
Recognition is what your brain does when you hear or read English. Words arrive. Your brain matches them to meanings it already knows. The work happens in the background. The brain is essentially using a lookup table. It sees the word barista and pulls up the meaning. Done. The work is comparison. Match the incoming signal to a known pattern.
And recognition can happen at amazing speed because matching is fast. The brain is very good at it. It is what brains are designed to do.
Production is something completely different. Production is what your brain does when you have to generate English. The thought starts. Your brain has to retrieve words from storage, assemble them into a grammatically correct sentence, adapt them to the social context, coordinate the muscles in your mouth to produce the sounds, all in real time, while also listening to the other person, while also tracking the social moment.
And the work of production is generation, not comparison. And generation is dramatically harder than comparison for any task in any domain.
Think about it this way. Recognizing a song you've heard before is easy. Composing a new song is hard. Recognizing a face is easy. Drawing a face from memory is hard. Recognizing an English sentence is easy. Producing your own English sentence is hard. The two skills are not even in the same league.
And here's the painful truth. The learning skill you've built from podcasts is recognition. Hours and hours of recognition. Your brain has gotten very good at matching incoming English to known meanings, but production has not been trained the same way.
And so you can understand a TED Talk perfectly because your brain is comparing, matching, recognizing. But you cannot order a coffee because that requires production, which is a completely different skill, which has not been built.
And the illusion that hours of input will magically turn into speaking ability has cost millions of learners countless hours of frustration because the input is not training the output. They're different systems. Listening to more podcasts does not make you a better speaker. Speaking makes you a better speaker.
Let's actually break down the 4 specific differences between recognition and production, because once learners see them clearly, they can stop blaming themselves for the gap.
Yes, 4 differences. Each one shows why these are 2 different skills.
Difference 1. Direction of the work.
Recognition is incoming. The English arrives and your brain processes it. You're receiving. Production is outgoing. The English starts inside you and your brain has to push it out into the world. You're creating.
And these are 2 completely different cognitive directions. One is downloading, the other is uploading. And uploading is dramatically more expensive than downloading in your phone, in your computer, and in your brain.
Difference 2, time pressure.
When you listen to a podcast, you have time. The podcast keeps moving, but if you miss something, the brain fills it in from context. You're not under pressure to produce anything. The clock is not on you.
When you speak, the clock is brutal. You may have 1 second to find a word. You may have 2 seconds to construct a sentence. And every second you delay is a second the listener is waiting, with their eyes on you, building an impression based on the silence.
Time pressure is the great destroyer of production. Recognition is timeless. Production is racing the clock, always.
Difference 3, predictability.
When you listen to a podcast, the content is structured. The host knows what they're going to say. They have prepared. The vocabulary is clean. Even casual podcasts are still structured by professionals who speak well.
When you produce English in real life, nothing is predictable. The barista might ask you a question you didn't expect. The colleague might use an idiom you've never heard. The conversation might pivot in a direction you weren't ready for, and you have to produce English in response to all of it, without preparation, without a script.
Predictable input is easy. Unpredictable input plus required output is brutal.
Difference 4, social presence.
When you listen to a podcast, no one is watching you. You can sit in your underwear in your kitchen, you can pause, you can replay, you can space out. There is no social cost to anything.
When you produce English, there is a human being in front of you, watching you, forming impressions, possibly judging, and the social presence triggers all the stress responses we covered in our cortisol episode, which physically reduces your access to your language brain.
So you're doing harder work under tighter time pressure with less predictability with a human watching. And then you wonder why your English collapses. The answer is it would be miraculous if it didn't.
4 differences: direction, time, predictability, social presence. Every one of them makes production fundamentally harder than recognition, and every one of them is something that hours of podcast listening does not address.
And once learners see this, the shame around the coffee shop freeze starts to dissolve because they realize, oh, I haven't been training the skill I need. I've been training a different skill. Of course the coffee shop is hard. I have never practiced for the coffee shop.
And this is the moment of clarity. Production needs production practice, not more recognition practice. And the practice is different, targeted, specific, and surprisingly accessible once you know what to do.
Let's give the audience the 3 practices that build production, because the diagnosis is one thing, the actual practice that fixes it is what matters.
Yes, 3 practices. Each one targets a different aspect of production.
Practice 1, self-narration.
This is the foundational practice. For 5 to 10 minutes a day, you narrate your own life out loud in English, to yourself, alone. Nobody else has to hear it.
What you are doing, what you are thinking, what you see around you. I am walking into the kitchen. I am making coffee. The coffee smells good. I'm wondering if I should also have a slice of toast. Just narrate in English out loud.
And what happens is your production system starts to operate. You are generating English without the social pressure of another human being. You are training the creation skill that recognition never builds. You are forcing your brain to retrieve, assemble, and produce in real time.
And the magic is you're doing it in a zero anxiety environment. So the cortisol stays low, the language brain stays open, and the production system gets a clean training environment to grow in.
Practice 2. Rehearse predictable situations in advance.
This one is brilliant for the coffee shop freeze. Most of the situations that trigger the freeze are actually predictable. Ordering coffee, buying groceries, checking in at hotels, making small talk at the start of meetings, asking for directions. These are recurring situations with predictable scripts.
So you can prepare out loud, in advance, run through what you might say at the coffee shop, run through small talk for your next meeting, run through asking a colleague for help on a task, practice the whole exchange, both your part and the likely responses.
And what happens is when the real situation arrives, your production system is already warmed up for it. The English comes out without freezing because you've already practiced. The brain doesn't have to invent the speech from scratch, it just delivers what you rehearsed.
This is exactly what high-performing speakers do for any high-stakes communication. They rehearse. The illusion that fluent speakers improvise everything from nothing is wrong. They prepare. They run through likely scenarios, and then they execute.
And learners can do the same thing, free, anywhere. 5 minutes of out-loud rehearsal before a predictable English situation transforms the actual situation.
Practice 3. Shadow real speakers.
Shadowing is a powerful technique. You take a short clip of natural English speech, maybe 20 seconds. You play it, you pause, and you repeat what was said word for word, trying to match the rhythm, the speed, the intonation as close as possible.
And then you play the next section and repeat for 5 or 10 minutes a day.
And what happens is your mouth and your speech system get trained in the actual sounds and rhythms of real English, the kind that the barista will use, the kind that the colleague will use, the kind that the podcast guests use. Your speech apparatus is no longer surprised by real English when it shows up in your life.
And shadowing also builds something else, the bridge from recognition to production, because you are taking English you understood and now actively producing it. You're using your input to build your output, which is exactly what learners need.
3 practices: self-narration, rehearsal, shadowing. Even 10 or 15 minutes a day combined transforms production within weeks, not years.
Because production is a separately trainable skill, and it responds quickly to deliberate practice. Most learners have never given it deliberate practice, so when they finally do, the gains come fast.
Okay, let's do a role play so learners can hear the difference between recognition mode and production mode in the same person.
Yes, set it up.
Imagine the learner. It's morning. They're listening to a TED Talk on neuroscience, quite advanced content, and someone interrupts them to ask, what is the speaker talking about?
Easy mode, recognition with a small amount of production scaffolding from the source material they just listened to.
Oh, this speaker is making a really fascinating point about how our brains process social rejection in the same regions that process physical pain. So when someone feels rejected by a friend or a colleague, the brain literally registers it as a kind of injury. The speaker is arguing that this is why social pain feels so intense, even though there's no physical wound. It's actually a sophisticated insight into how we evolved.
And listen to that. Articulate, confident, sophisticated vocabulary, complex sentence structure. This is the learner using their recognition skill, plus a small amount of production scaffolding from the source material they just listened to. They sound brilliant.
Now, same learner 2 hours later, at a coffee shop. The barista looks at them. What can I get you?
Hello, I would like, can I have, the coffee? Sorry, the, latte. No, just regular coffee, please, with, milk, small. Thank you.
And listen to that.
The articulate speaker from the TED Talk summary just disappeared. The vocabulary collapsed, the sentence structure collapsed, the confidence collapsed. Same person, same brain, same English level. 2 minutes ago, they were summarizing neuroscience. Now they can't order a basic drink.
And the difference is, the TED Talk summary was recognition with a small amount of production scaffolding. The speaker had just heard the words. They were freshly available. The structure was provided by the source. The vocabulary was primed. Production was easy because so much of the work had already been done by the input.
But the coffee shop is pure production. Cold start, no source material to support, no primed vocabulary, no structure to follow, just a question and a need to generate English from scratch in front of a human under time pressure, which is exactly what their brain has never been trained to do.
And this is why the gap exists, and why it is so painful, and why it is completely normal.
And the fix is the 3 practices we just talked about. Within weeks of starting self-narration, rehearsal, and shadowing, the same learner at the coffee shop will be saying, "Hey, can I get a small latte with oat milk, please?" Easily, without freezing, without the collapse.
Same learner, same English knowledge. Different training, completely different outcome.
Word tour?
Word tour. First word, recognition. Recognition is the act of identifying something you have seen or heard before, matching new input to known patterns. And it is the dominant skill that podcast listening builds in your brain.
For example, most learners have spent years building their English recognition through input while leaving their production skill almost untrained. Repeat. Recognition.
Recognition.
Next, production. Production is the act of creating, generating, making something new. In language, it means generating speech or writing from your own brain, in real time, on demand. It is the skill that hours of listening does not build.
For example, recognition and production are 2 completely different skills, and you need to train production deliberately because no amount of listening will build it for you. Repeat. Production.
Production. Next, to assemble. To assemble means to put together, to construct, to build from parts. Speech production is essentially the assembly of language in real time, choosing parts, putting them together, and delivering them as a finished product.
For example, speaking English fluently requires you to assemble sentences in real time, under pressure, with no preparation, which is dramatically harder than understanding sentences that are already assembled. Repeat. Assemble.
Next, to activate. To activate means to make something work, turn it on, bring it into operation. In language learning, activation is the process of taking vocabulary and skills that exist in your brain but are not yet usable and making them functional.
For example, the whole point of production practice is to activate the English that is already in your head but cannot yet make it out of your mouth in real time. Repeat. Activate.
Activate. Next, scaffolding. Scaffolding is the temporary structure that supports a building under construction. In learning, scaffolding is the support that helps you do something you couldn't yet do on your own. Recognition provides scaffolding for partial production, but the scaffolding has to come down eventually if you want real fluency.
For example, listening to a podcast provides scaffolding for talking about that podcast, but it cannot scaffold completely unrelated real-world speaking situations like ordering coffee. Repeat. Scaffolding.
Scaffolding. And finally, generative. Generative describes something that produces or creates new outputs. The production skill is fundamentally generative. It is not about matching or recognizing. It is about creating English from nothing on demand.
For example, speaking is a generative skill, meaning your brain must create something new each time you open your mouth, which is completely different from recognizing English that someone else is creating. Repeat. Generative.
Generative. 6 words today. Recognition, production, assemble, activate, scaffolding, and generative. Every one of these is a real, useful, modern English word that you'll hear in conversations about learning, psychology, AI, and creativity.
And they capture precisely the mechanics of why understanding and speaking are not the same skill.
Sophie, one final takeaway for everyone watching.
That the gap between your understanding and your speaking is not a mystery. It is not a sign of broken English. It is the normal, predictable result of training one skill, recognition, while leaving the other skill, production, almost completely
completely untrained.
The gap is exactly what should exist when you do hours of input and almost no output. And the freeze at the coffee shop is not a failure. It is your production system being asked to perform without having been trained. You don't blame your legs for being weak when you've never gone to the gym. Your speaking system is the same. It needs its own gym. And input is not gym time.
The fix is deliberate production practice, self-narration, rehearsal, shadowing. Even small daily doses change everything because production is a fast improving skill once you give it the right reps.
And the version of you who can summarize the podcast brilliantly already exists. That is the same version who, with a few weeks of production training, can order coffee, make small talk, contribute in meetings, and live in English with confidence. The brain is ready. The mouth just needs reps.
Small challenge before we go. For the next 7 days, replace 10 minutes of your daily podcast listening with 10 minutes of self-narration. Don't add time, trade time. Move some input to output. Just 10 minutes a day.
And notice what happens. Notice whether your real-life speaking starts to feel more available. Notice whether the freezes get shorter. Notice whether words start to come faster when you need them.
Because 7 days of this is enough to feel the shift. And once you feel it, you understand that production is its own skill and that you can train it. And once you can train it, the freezes are no longer permanent. They are temporary symptoms of an undertrained system.
Drop a comment after the week. Tell us what happened. Tell us if anything shifted. Tell us if the gap between understanding and speaking started to close. We want to celebrate the wins with you.
Because the freedom of finally being able to produce English in real life after years of only understanding it is one of the most beautiful moments in language learning, and it is closer than most learners realize.
I'm Mark.
I'm Sophie.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being willing to look at why understanding alone has not been enough.
Train production. Trust the gym. We'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.
Bye.